Hello.
Announcements.
Uh,
You all just heard that this meeting is being recorded, and it will be available on our website in 3 weeks or so, as almost all of our meetings are. It's video on the website and it's captioned, so it's a good way to go back and pick up any information you might have missed. It's not possible to access the chat on the video, however, so if there's something on the chat that you're interested in, try to copy it out now. And I know there are two documents on the chat that are good. Um, this is our March meeting of the chapter, and we are very pleased at this meeting to have as our speaker Andy Chandler. Some of us heard him speak at the convention last year, and we're really enlightened on cybersecurity and thought it would be great to share it with everybody. So Andy Chandler, I'm just going to read you his introduction because what he wrote to me was very amusing, and so I'm just going to pass it on to you. Andy Chandler is a retired cybersecurity professional. He
Thank you.
was, hello, maybe, sorry, I'm going to start over again, but David, maybe we could just mute everybody. How are we doing?
You and I are the only ones unmuted, and I'm going to be muted again in a second. So it's all yours, Catherine.
Okay, so I'm introducing Andy Chandler, our speaker tonight, cybersecurity professional who was the security manager and advisor for banks and corporations, and most recently for Tyler Technologies, where he worked for almost 10 years. Then Andy says in the introduction he sent to us, on behalf of the cybersecurity profession, Andy wants to apologize to you, the user of all things internet. You shouldn't have to be so super cautious about using the internet, but due to the way it was designed, you must be cyber aware. Andy is an individual with lifelong hearing loss, and partly because of that, he has always been fascinated by the technology that helps him to, quote, hear better. With the advent of computers and the internet, texting, email, caption apps, he was enthralled. He's also fascinated by internet scams and is fully aware that he is only a click away from being scammed himself. Andy loves educating users on internet scams and hopes to leave his audience with a jaundiced eye. Did you really win the lottery? Is your grandchild really in jail? Is your new overseas romantic partner real? Nope, 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 he says. Quick lesson, be skeptical always. And with that, I'm going to introduce Andy. I'm going to ask everybody to save their questions till he has uh, given his formal presentation with a PowerPoint, and then we'll have plenty of time for questions. And when we do get to questions, we ask that you raise your hand, and you can do that by going into reactions. So, Andy, it's over to you. Thank you so much. And I'm going to mute myself.
Thank you so much, Catherine, for that wonderful introduction. Thank you all for joining me this evening virtually. I am joining you from the wonderful state of Maine, South Portland, Maine. That's why you see the lighthouse behind me, just 5 miles away from the Portland headlight. And by the way, I see some names in this meeting that I recognize. Teresa and Christy Abrams. Christy and I are members of a Toastmasters group called Audible Talkers in Arizona. It's a fabulous group. They have helped me immensely in improving my speaking ability. So if you have any interest in improving your own speaking ability, I encourage you to talk to Christy. And also see Holly, who I've met at the HLAA convention. So, all right, well, let me get started with my presentation here. Give me a minute, please. Let's see. Okay, hopefully you all see my Wise Hour presentation about being paranoid. And not only am I going to talk about internet scams, but how artificial intelligence fits in. AI is the big thing these days. As Catherine mentioned, I am a retired cybersecurity professional with a lifelong hearing loss. Like many of you, it's been a struggle throughout my career to get the accommodations I need. But the past 5, 10 years with the internet and caption apps and CART and ASR, it's been a tremendous improvement versus when I started working 40 years ago. I will be at HLAA National in Indianapolis in June. I hope to see you there. Although I live in Maine now, I'm actually a native of Kansas. What happened was my now wife and I decided we were tired of the Wizard of Oz, and it was time to move to the rocky coast of Maine. We absolutely love it here. We are so fortunate we moved before we couldn't afford it. And one of the things I love to do on the Maine coast is ride my e-bike, which you see a picture of me right there. I have to confess, this is not really me, but a picture of what I would wish I looked like, as well as my wife. Many of the images and pictures you're going to see in this presentation were created by AI tools. I hope you are starting to use AI tools in your life and possibly your job. They're absolutely amazing tools, and they can do a lot for you. But the challenge is, these tools in the wrong hands can make for very convincing scams. Here's the basic truth when it comes to AI. You will not be able to distinguish the real from the AI generated. My wife saw this Golden Girls image in her Facebook feed, and she was so excited. Andy, look, this could be a Golden Girls reboot with actresses we're very familiar with. Sadly, I had to tell her, nope, it's not true. And she was puzzled as why people could use real actors' images and the Disney logo and so forth to create these stories. They can, and they can do it very easily. But I am happy to report that the rumors of a season 4 of Ted Lasso, that is true. And my wife again asked me, well, how did you know that, Andy? It's really quite simple. Just go to your favorite search engine, type in Ted Lasso season 4, Golden Girls reboot or whatever, look past the sponsored links and look for reputable news sources. That's all it really takes. The key is to always verify. Question for you all. Can AI be used to manipulate public opinion? Absolutely. Now, you folks living in New York will not have seen the news story in the Portland newspaper, but it was reported that a man who lived in South Portland was arrested for hoarding, and he had 58 cats in his house. Can you believe it? This is a fake news story I was able to use an AI tool. All I did was say, create a news story about a South Portland man hoarding with 58 cats. This is what it created. All I had to do was add my picture. Very easy to do, took all of 5 minutes. And maybe you heard this news about Medicare.
Good day, mates. Big news from the US government. Medicare and Medicaid are now covering the cost of hearing aids. Yeah, you heard that right. This means easier access to essential hearing assistance for those who need it most. So, if you've been putting off getting those hearing aids, now's the time to tune in and take advantage of this fantastic opportunity. Stay connected and hear the world around you loud and clear with Medicare and Medicaid support. Cheers to better hearing for all. Good day, mates.
All right, Medicare and Medicaid are finally covering hearing aids. But as you can probably guess, it's not true. Again, that was a video I was able to use using an AI tool. All I had to do was type in, create a video based on Medicare paying for hearing aids. That's it. and it created that video. Very easy to use. When we look at the top fraud types we see today, they're no different than they were from 20 years ago. It's just that with AI and internet and all the tools the scammers have, it's very easy for them to create very convincing scams. One of the most widespread scams we're seeing these days is job offer scams. These are texts that I received on my phone. And the thing is, it's very difficult to find a job these days, even a white-collar job in the IT industry, in the cyber industry. Very different than it was a few years ago. And people want to work remotely. They don't want to go in the office. So there's a lot of text and emails going out promising good paying jobs, remote work. But the 99% of what you're seeing are scams. I'm going to show you a scam produced by AARP about how these things work. And it's not working. Huh. Let me go back. Let's see what well,
If you're in the market for a job, here are tips on how to tell a legitimate job offer from a fake one. Don't pay for the promise of a job. Legitimate employers, including the federal government, will never ask you to pay to get a job. Anyone who does is a scammer. If you've received a job offer right away without having applied to an open position, spoken with a hiring manager, or participated in an interview, it's most likely a scam. If you're offered big bucks for some simple work, ask yourself why. Jobs that don't require much effort, skill, or experience aren't likely to make you rich. If they claim otherwise, it's more likely to be a scam. Protect yourself by making sure your resume reveals only professional information. Be strategic about what you put in it. Don't include your date of birth or even your full street address. For more tips, go to aarp.org/fraudwatchnetwork.
okay, those job offer scams, what we see is phishing via text. That's called smishing, if you're not familiar with that term. It's the same thing as getting those phishing emails via email. Now we're getting them via text. And we're getting them more by text because most of our email services are getting better about blocking those phishing emails. And those criminals, as soon as one way is blocked, they find another way to get to you. The way to identify a scam text is if it came in as a surprise, and it was unexpected, and it's from an unknown contact, you can pretty much guarantee it's a phish or a smish. You've probably seen the same text messages that I have. All these text messages saying that I owe the local toll agency some money. I'm sure they're all over the country. Apple and Android can't seem to stop them, so I'm sure you've gotten some of these texts. And what's interesting is I can look at this domain and say, this is China. Obviously, these are fake, these are scams, do not respond. Another common scam via text is the promise of surefire investments, especially related to crypto. Again, this is a text I received. No idea what it was, but I knew it was spam or a scam, so I just clicked delete. Another insidious scam, particularly for those who grew up in a certain time, are people reaching out, hey, I found your name in my contacts. Have we met before? If you're from my generation, you're inclined to reply back, I'm sorry, you got the wrong number. That's what the scammers are counting on. They want to initiate a conversation with you to see how far they can take it. The best thing to do is not reply to these texts and just click on report junk. This is how you spot a smish. Was it expected? Do you know the sender? Did the texter identify themselves? If there's any doubt, just research by other means. Whatever you do, do not respond to the text. Speaking of scams, we all love our caption calls, do we not? Whether or not we're using InnoCaption or similar apps or CapTel or those type of phones. What you may not be aware of is that scams can be conducted through relay services. And what's so nasty about these scams is that the operator in between, the relay operator, knows it's a scam, but they can't do anything about it. They can't say a word. By law, relay services cannot screen calls validity. So just because it came through a relay service, you still have to treat it with a skeptical eye. Now, tech support scams. Normally, I don't talk about this in my presentations because I just don't see very many of them. But a couple of weeks ago, I was doing a co-presentation with the local FBI office, and they said tech support scams were the #1 scam reported in Maine. That's interesting. So I just want to warn you that if you ever see a pop-up message on your screen saying your computer is infected, call this number. It's a scam. Don't respond. And I'm going to show you another video about how these scams work.
Tech support cons typically start in one of two ways: an unsolicited phone call or a pop-up warning on your computer or device. These scammers pretend to be connected with a brand name like Microsoft, Apple, or McAfee and say that there's a problem or virus on your computer that needs to be fixed. But those companies won't contact you out of the blue about your computer. The con artist will request remote access to your device in order to run phony diagnostic tests. Don't engage with this type of request. If you do, they will pretend to have found a virus that will damage your computer and pressure you to pay hundreds of dollars for repairs you don't need, asking for a credit card number or requesting payment by gift card or money transfer. Your best plan of action is to shut down your device and don't respond. If you think something may be wrong with your computer, turn to a company you trust and have it checked out. For more scam prevention tips, go to aarp.org/.
The problem with scams, particularly if the victim has been conned out of tens and hundreds of thousands of dollars, perhaps a government imposter scam, a romance scam, investment scam. If they withdraw from the retirement funds, say the 401k, to send $100,000 for a crypto investment scam, not only are they out $100,000, they have to pay taxes on that 401k withdrawal. So it's terrible what's happening. And so that's what's very, very important, to be very, very careful anytime you want to send funds. What can you do about these scams, these calls, these messages, these text messages, and so forth? I always tell my audience, if you forget everything else I'll tell you tonight, please remember this message. The best thing to do is react with no reaction. Do not respond to those unexpected messages. Because what the scammers are counting on is an emotional entanglement. Getting you aroused with fear, your grandchild's in jail, or excitement, you won the lottery. I call it the heart thumper, boom, 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 boom. Any message that creates that emotional reaction, that's what the scammers are counting on. And once they got you hooked, they'll keep on going. The best thing to do when you see a message that raises your heartbeat is to disengage, breathe, step back, and talk to someone you trust about what's at issue. I really encourage people to make a cyber buddy. Maybe you remember when we were children, we went to camp or swim class, and we made a swim buddy or a camp buddy. It's the same idea. You're looking out for your buddy, and your buddy is looking out for you. Ideally, your buddy is not a technical person, because tech people like me tend to kind of bore you with the details. You just need somebody to talk to saying, hey, I got this call, I got this message, help me think through it. The other thing you can do is call the AAAP Fraud Watch Network hotline. It's made up of volunteers who have seen these scams over and over again. You call them up, they'll help you figure it out. And if you're unfortunate to fall for a scam, they will give you steps on recovery. So what's the impact of AI in scams? It's the same old scams. AI just makes them more clever. It enables the scammers to use your information to make the scams more convincing. So it's just the same old thing, just more clever. The key is to always treat messages with a skeptical eye. Remember, if you feel that emotional reaction, that's the red flag. Always verify from independent sources and talk to somebody about the issue. You have to ask yourself, did you really win the lottery? Is your grandchild really in jail? Do you really have a new romantic partner 40 younger than you? And so forth and so on. The answer is no. No, no, and no, and no again. As much as we might wish the good things to be true, the answer is no. And if you do fall for a scam, the minute you are asked to send funds via gift cards, wire funds, or do anything to do with crypto, such as go to a Bitcoin ATM, ding, 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 that's a surefire of a scam. At that point, stop and withdraw yourself. President Reagan, those of you who remember him, had these wise words about the Soviet Union: trust but verify. That's actually wise advice for our internet age, the slight twist. Verify first, then trust. Always verify unexpected messages, especially if they could cost you money or cause you to react. And again, call your friend, call your cyber buddy, or call the AARP Fraud Watch hotline to work it out. Now let's talk about hearing loss. As Catherine mentioned in the introduction, I love technology. And I think many people with hearing love technology. I remember going to Sears in 1982 and buying this telecaption box. There was just a few closed caption programs on the air at the time, and that's how you were able to get your TV to decode those captions. I still remember plugging it into my big fat TV and seeing the captions. Usually it was just Sesame Street because that was the only thing that was captioned at the time. But hey, captions, right? And then there's the TDD. Wonderful. We could talk with our friends, hearing and non-hearing, via words, not voice. And then there were pagers. And I actually don't remember the pagers that much, but I know I had one. And again, it was a way to communicate with other people via text, via captions. And finally, there was an infamous BlackBerry. There were two types of people who had BlackBerries back in that day: business people and people with hearing loss. BlackBerries with an awesome keyboard was a way we stayed connected with each other because we were able to type our messages and read them instead of using our ears. And I still have my original BlackBerry. But then, on June 29th, 2007, our world changed. Think back, that's what, almost 20 years ago, 18 years ago? What could have happened back then? Steve Jobs introduced the iPhone. And over these 18 years, we have so many new things that we can use with our smartphones. Of course, email and texting, caption apps even, social media, dating sites, and then maps and rideshare and delivery services. I asked the AI engine to create an image for me about how happy people were with smartphones. And this is what it created. And when I look at this image, I'm thinking It's almost like a religious revival of some sort. Manna from heaven in the form of a smartphone. But what's the problem with hearing loss in cybersecurity? Let's think about this. We are visual people. We rely on our eyes instead of our ears. I'm sure you've seen this phrase, and it's absolutely true. We hear with our eyes. And we despise noisy places, do we not? Restaurants, parties, coffee hour after church. It's very frustrating places to be. And as a result, sometimes we respond by gradually fading away from our friends. And we gravitate toward resources where we can read instead of hear. And then we come to captions. Oh, captions, my captions. Give me my captions. If any of you are English majors, you may see there's a spin on, I believe it was William Blake. No, it was some other famous poet that wrote a poem about Abraham Lincoln's death. He called it, "Oh, Captain, oh, my Captain." This is, "Oh, captions, my captions." And the thing about captions is, again, we gravitate toward our smartphone, our computer. Here's a text message that I received some time ago from some stranger. "Hey, how you doing? Long time no see. I miss you." And here's the problem. Loneliness. I don't know about you folks, but I've been hard of hearing all throughout my whole life. And there was a time, particularly in my teens, where I was desperately lonely, trying to fit into the hearing world. And who knows what kind of trouble I could have gotten myself in if the internet was available at the time. And the truth is, we now live in the midst of a loneliness epidemic. The Surgeon General from the last administration said so, and in my own paper, the Portland Press Herald, had a front page article about Maine's loneliness epidemic. And then I saw this awesome article in the New York Times. In one of the documents I shared, I provide the link to this article, where she talks about how digital drugs have us hooked. And I think this quote really speaks to our time. For hearing people and people with hearing loss. In the developed world, we are lonelier, more anxious, and more depressed than ever. It's my opinion that we become way too reliant on digital communications and less reliant on personal relationships, which exposes us to fraud in its many shapes and sizes. And now I'm going to talk about romance scams, and there's stories about this everywhere. When I was talking to the FBI agent a couple of weeks ago, they say that when people come in with these stories, it's absolutely devastating, and there's really nothing they can do to get the money back. Here's an example where a 75-year-old man connected with a young Chinese immigrant via LinkedIn. They were talking about investments, and over a period of time, they became very close friends. He fell in love with her, and he lost his life savings of $715,000 to this young woman. And this happens over and over and over again. And what's really sad about these scams, he still misses her. And we hear this a lot. They miss being in love, even though they've been scammed out of their life savings. But the heart wants what the heart wants, right? And the sad thing is that with all the emotional manipulation attacks out there, this is by far the most vicious, long-lasting, enormous heartbreak, and potentially financial destruction. And when people are in the midst of it, it's very hard to talk them out of it. So it's really, really important, if you start an online romance, to listen to your cyber buddy, listen to your family. If you go to your bank to withdraw funds, your banker is going to say, wait, listen to your banker, your pastor, law enforcement. They are telling you something very important. Remember, It all begins with emotional infliction, emotional entanglements. When you feel yourself getting emotionally involved, whether it's fear, excitement, or romance, that's the time to call your cyber buddy or the AARP Frog Watch helpline. Okay, that covers the first third of my presentation, where, again, I'm talking about emotional entanglements. And I don't know what the stats are, but I'm sure the majority of scams start with someone responding emotionally to a message of some sort. But the threats on the internet are not always directed straight at us. There are other sources of threats on the internet that are beyond our control. First, I want to talk about the bad actors. You probably know this already, but the bad actors are not some disgruntled teenager in their mother's basement. These are criminal enterprises, employing or even enslaving hundreds of people, typically in East Asia or Africa. They have hundreds of people specializing in the roles, conducting the scams, designing the scams, laundering money, technical support, and so forth. Just like any other large corporation, these gangs have specialties as well, and they're all in it for financial gain. In Maine, we can see story after story about data breaches, and I'm sure you see them even more in New York. Thousands, millions of our records are exposed, and there's nothing we can do about it because they're in the hands of the businesses that we use. And here's a scary thing about when a data breach happens. Let's say the hacking company, the criminals hack into your medical office, your doctor's office, and they get a hold of your username and password that you use to log into the portal. They have tools that will immediately try to log into thousands of other sites using that same username and password. This happens automatically and in seconds. That's why it's so important that for all your sensitive sites, you use unique passwords. Do not use the same password around multiple sites. We'll talk about passwords towards the end of my presentation, but please keep that in mind. Unique passwords for all sensitive sites. And you should also be using two-factor authentication. You've used two-factor already. It's a fancy term, but all that means is after you log in with a username and password, you get a text on your phone and you have to enter a number. That's all it is. And the beauty of two-factor is even if the criminals have your username and password, they still can't log in unless they have access to your phone. Because of all these data breaches, we no longer have secrets. The scammers have your phone number and your email address. They likely have your social security number and birth date as well. They get access to your social media feed, and if they're really clever, they present themselves as legitimate companies buying your internet history from data brokers. So how can you defend yourself against data breaches? You can't stop them. All you can do is set your accounts up such that you are notified immediately of any suspicious transactions. What I'm talking about is setting up alerts for all your bank accounts, your investment accounts, your credit cards, so that anytime a transaction hits your credit card or money is withdrawn from your bank account, you immediately get a text. All these services offer such text alerting. The problem is they all do it a different way. And for every bank and every credit card you have to do it for each individual one. It's a pain, but it's definitely worth it. Here's an example of my Citi card. And the funny thing about getting these text messages is number one, you're never lonely because you get buzzed all the time. And number two, you're never surprised when your spouse buys a present. So here's an example where I got this funny looking transaction, about a $2.75 transaction in the city of Portland, MA. Now, MA is the state abbreviation for Massachusetts, not Maine. So I thought this was kind of funny. Therefore, I looked into it right away and determined it was a mistake on the vendor's part. Yes, I indeed parked in the city of Portland, Maine. They just used the wrong state abbreviation. The point is, if I had waited till I looked at my statement at the end of the month, and I don't really bother to look at my statements, I would not have seen this. And if this was a fraudulent transaction, once they see that a small transaction gets through, the scammers will try with a large transaction. The other thing AARP really recommends is freezing your credit report. And one of the handouts I sent is from the main AARP office and how you can do that. In the state of Maine, it's free of charge to freeze your credit report. I don't know what it is in New York, but the idea of freezing your report is that once it's frozen, no one can use your information to apply for a loan, a credit card, or a bank account because they can't pull down your credit report. You also may be using a credit card that provides alerting services. For example, I have a Chase card that I use. The other day, I was at Macy's. I didn't have my Macy's card with me, so I used my Chase card to buy a shirt. Well, then Chase sent me a message saying, your Macy's card had been used for 6 months. We consider it a dormant account. Was this a legitimate transaction? Again, Chase doesn't do Macy's cards, but they let me know if it's a suspicious transaction. Now, I'm getting a little bit technical here. You may ask, well, Andy, how did you know that that link it's providing you is legitimate? I'm going to talk about what we call the first / 2 periods back rule. A lot of people don't know about this. When you have an email or get a link, you can put the mouse cursor over the link, and somewhere on your browser window, it will display the link that it's actually going to. So to determine what site that link is actually going to, you look for the first / after the HTTPS, the / here it is, and you go back 2 periods, 1, 2. Oh, chase.com. That's legitimate, so I'm going to click the link. Let's look at this one. Again, I want the very first / well, it does say chase.com, but wait a minute, it keeps going. First / 1, 2. It is not going to chase.com. It is going to xri.ru. Whatever that is, and I made it up, it's a Russian domain. Let's do another one. Here we go. Look for that very first /. Oh, there it is. 1, 2. It's actually going to chase. Hey, it's the word chase in it, so maybe that's safe. No. It's going to XIN, not CON. And XIN is a China domain. If you keep this in mind, it really helps you check out the links. So what can we do about this mess that we're in with all these data breaches, with all our information exposed that we can't control? The best thing we can do is be defensive. Set up alerts on your financial accounts. Freeze your credit report and use unique passwords and 2-factor authentication for sensitive sites. I encourage you to be like Safety Cat. Always treat messages with a skeptical eye. Beware of that emotional reaction. That's a surefire sign you are the target of a scam. And if you have any questions or concerns, verify from independent sources and talk to your cyber buddy. Now we're into my final third of the presentation. And I'm going to talk about passwords, everybody's favorite subject. We just love managing all those hundreds of passwords to keep track of, don't we? Here are some quick password tips that you're not going to like. As I said earlier, make them unique. particularly among your sensitive sites. And really, we're recommending 14 characters or more. Hate to tell you that. But it's okay to use passphrases. Passphrases are unique to you that you make up. Example right here. Now, I would never use this password since you've seen it, but there's an example. It's got 3 of the 4 character sets. Actually, all 4 of the character sets. Now, many websites will force you to change your passwords every 90 days. Your work accounts may do that. Cybersecurity Acts will tell you that's very poor practice. It's very hard to get companies to change their habits. The problem is, when you change passwords every 90 days, you're going to pick an easy password. Password 1, password 2, password 3. Another very common password is the password for the season. For example, we're in winter right now. So you would say winter 2025, exclamation point. And then when 90 days comes around, you change it to spring 2025, exclamation point, and so forth. Scammers know those tricks and they use them. And it's really important to use that two-factor authentication so that if the scammers get a hold of your username and password, they still can't get access unless they can get to your phone. Again, I've talked about two-factor authentication. It's a fancy term. I don't like this term, but really all it means is a secondary authentication independent of your username and password to verify you are who you say you are. And most of us get our second factor via a text on our phone. There are authenticator apps. Google Authenticator, Microsoft has one. You might have to use one at work. OKTA is a very popular one. But the idea is it's a secondary factor that is separate from your computer. Okay, hopefully I convinced you to use long passwords and make them unique. How do you keep track of them? Now, I'm about to say something that if there's any IT professionals on this call or cybersecurity professionals, they're going to say, wait a minute, Andy, that's bad advice. Don't tell people that. The problem is, I'm looking at people like my wife, who is extraordinarily intelligent. She's fluent in Spanish, and never in my life, no matter how hard I study, could I ever understand Spanish, much less speak it. Same way with her in computers. She just doesn't have that intuitive sense about how computers work. So she relies on me. So one of the things you can do is you have a browser that will store passwords for you. It's Safari, Chrome, Edge, and so forth. And if for nothing else, if you're not going to do anything else, that's not a bad way to store your passwords. The problem is, don't do this on your work computer, but on your personal computer. The problem is, if anybody ever gets access to your computer, they may have access to your passwords. The saving grace is sometimes Chrome or Safari will ask whoever's looking for those passwords to authenticate via fingerprint or eye scan. But nonetheless, there is that risk. The other issue is you're locked into that specific browser. So if you go to another computer using a friend's browser, you're not going to have access to your passwords. I'm sure you've heard of password managers. They are much better. They are a better alternative, but they are complicated to set up and use. And again, if I was to ask my wife to use a password manager, she would look at me like, Andy, I'll use password managers as soon as you learn to speak Spanish. Not going to happen. Let's talk about password managers. They are the best way to manage passwords if you are comfortable with technology. And you should pay for the paid version. They all offer a free version, but you're better off with the paid version. And the neat thing about password managers, they enable you to manage your passwords between all your different devices, computers, smartphone, tablet, and so forth. People will ask me, what do I recommend for password managers? I say, I don't want to make those recommendations. So I point them to Wirecutter, which is a New York Times website that makes recommendations. And they, in February, recommended these 2 passwords, 1Password and Bitwarden.
Sorry. Pause you for a minute. This is Catherine. We're missing a lot of the captions. So I'm not sure what to suggest, but the whole discussion following the fact that they ask you to renew your passwords every 90 days, I didn't get anything after that until just recently. So I'm not sure what to say. You're talking slowly. That's not the problem.
Catherine, I'm getting all the captions.
You're getting all the passwords?
Yes.
Maybe it's my internet. Okay, sorry. I'm sorry to interrupt you. Okay, John, thank you very much. All right.
Well, Catherine, I'm glad you pointed that out. I did notice today, I used the ASR feature in Zoom. It does not seem to be working very well tonight for some reason. So I'm sorry.
Okay, I'm using ASR on my phone, going along with it. Maybe it has better cell phone reception than internet reception. Anyway, I'm sorry to interrupt you, and I'm going to mute myself.
Okay. Well, I hope you folks were able to understand me and see captions. I really prefer to do these things in person because that way you can see the audience and wait a minute, something's not working right. Okay, if you are all Mac, for example, I have a MacBook, an iPhone, an iPad, and an Apple Watch. If you are all Mac, you can use the Apple Passwords feature that was released not too long ago. It only works on Apple devices, but if you are Apple, it's not a bad way to go. It's not as robust as password managers, but it's free. I mean, it's with your Mac. What about writing them down? Not in the office, but at home. Absolutely, it's fine to write them down. The likelihood of someone from China break into your house to steal your password list is very remote. It's actually safer to write them down than to keep them in a list in a Word or Excel document on your computer. Now, you're probably starting to see something called passkeys, and they are the future. Eventually, you won't need to keep track of hundreds of passwords. And the way they work, they're tied to your computer, your smartphone, to your Apple account or your Google account. And the beautiful thing about passkeys is when you sign on to a website with a passkey, they're not going to make you create a username and password. So there is no username and passwords for the criminals to steal. For example, New York Times, if you were to create a new account in New York Times, you can do it the old-fashioned way with the email address and a password, or you can use a passkey by logging in with your Apple ID, your Facebook ID, or your Google ID. And it ties back to your Google email address or in Apple to your Apple ID. And once you enable that feature, it's so much easier to log in with than having to type in the password. The advantage is no passwords are stored or shared, so hackers can't steal them. They can't be guessed, stolen, or used in phishing attacks because that passkey is attached to your device. The only problem is, and I still haven't figured this out, what happens if you lose your device? How can you recover all those passkeys? There are ways, but it's not going to be pretty. Okay, I'm just about done. Again, I'm sorry if the captions were not working or you couldn't understand me. We'll talk about, please ask me your questions and comments afterwards. But before I close, I want to show you a fun video I created using this tool, feed.oo. All I did was tell this website to create a video about a con man named Andy Chandler who lives in South Portland.
I'm Andy Chandler, the guy you'd never trust with your wallet. South Portland's my playground, and I've turned scamming into an art form. You see, it's not just about the money, it's the thrill of the chase. I've sold fake concert tickets, convinced folks I was a charity rep, and even faked a few emergencies. Each con has its own charm. But the best part? Watching the disbelief on their faces when the truth hits. Sure, I'm a con man, but in this game, I'm the Picasso of deception, painting my own reality, one lie at a time.
Again, I just went to this website, typed in that one sentence, and presto, that's all it took. Okay, all right, well, let's open the floor to comments and questions and sharing of stories.
Okay, sorry, I'm really having trouble with my internet. I can see who has their hands raised, I think, but I can't really see the questions in the chat. So I wonder if, John, would you mind looking at the questions in the chat and bringing them up as
I'm
they?
actually gonna have to leave in a few minutes, so I'm not a good
Oh,
person. to
okay,
be
then,
talking to.
can somebody else do that? Is Tony, are you on?
Yes, I'm on.
Okay.
I'll try to do it, but I'm also in the middle of texting with a family situation, so I may have to
Oh,
go.
never mind,
Well,
never
but
mind.
I'll start.
I can
I'll
actually,
start.
never mind,
Okay.
I can see them well enough. I think Al Chen has his hand raised. Do you want to ask your question, Al? You seem to be.
Hi, thank you,
Yeah.
Catherine. Thank you, Andy. What an awesome and informative presentation that you did. I have a question for you. When you were doing your slideshow, I saw two sample text messages. One text message had a phone number at the top, and the other text message had like a 5 or 6 digit identifier number at the top. And I frequently get, texts that for whatever purposes they say type Y to say yes or N to no or stop to opt out kind of stuff. And if it's from a phone number that I don't recognize, I just delete it and put it in the junk. But my question goes to the text that has the 5 or 6 digit identifier at the top that looks more legit kind of thing. And I was wondering, I think in your example, you had a chase for a city app, it looks legit. But my question to you is, do you have any comments or suggestions as to those type of texts where they have a 5 or 6 digit identifier? It looks to be legit. So when they say type Y, N, or stop to opt out or whatever, do you have any comments about that?
Very good question, and I've not been asked that before about those 5 to 6 pin identifiers. I don't pay too much attention to the phone number or the those identifiers. If they come in unexpected and I don't know the sender, then I make assume it's spam or a scam. Now, I use the contacts app on my phone. So if a text comes in from my doctor's office, it's going to say the doctor's office name. Okay? And that's okay. I know it's legitimate. But yeah, it's not a mistake, but I donated to the Democratic Party one time. And now I get all these texts from Act Blue about donating more. And yes, I hit stop, no, whatever. They keep coming. So really, it's the best thing to do is just click on delete message and report as junk mail. That's probably the safest thing to do. Does that answer your question? Great.
John, is your hand raised to ask a question or? You're muted. John, you're muted. You're muted.
Sorry. Yeah, I just wanted to share a tip for creating passwords that I got from my brother-in-law, who's a tech security guy. If, for example, you need to create an 8 character password, pick your favorite song, take the first letter of the first 4 words, and then the second letter of the next 4 words as something no one is ever going to guess, and yet it's one that you can remember. So just passing that along.
Great advice. And what I do sometimes when I have to create a new password, I look at my bookshelf. Oh, there's Catherine's book. So I'm going to use the first word of the title, shouting. And then I look at my other shelf and see almond dark chocolates, my snack box. So I'm going to pick a word from that box. And then I'm going to look at I got some numbers here. I'm going to pick those numbers. Take them in from independent sources rather than use my mind, because my mind gets in a one-track mind, right? So by looking at different sources and patch together the combination, it should be a more secure password. That's great advice, John. Thank you.
Can I follow up with that question? And also, if anybody else has questions, Tony, I can see the questions in the chat and I can ask them. It's
Okay.
so Andy, okay, we're creating all these fancy, unique passwords. I know we're not supposed to. I don't really know what we're not supposed to do because I didn't get most of that conversation. But if your passwords are in a document on your computer that is shared as a document on your phone, is that as insecure as it probably sounds?
For example, let's say you use the Notes app on your iPhone to save your passwords. That is not as secure as a password manager, but it's not that bad because on your iPhone, there's someone to see that list. They have to pass the eye scan or the fingerprint scan, right? And the nice thing about putting on the Notes app, if you use a Mac, you have access to those passwords on your Mac as well. The only thing to keep in mind is that if anybody gets access to your device, they'll see those passwords. They won't have to go beyond another password level as with the password manager. But
So they would have to physically have your computer or phone in their hands.
right. Or get access to your computer remotely. And for example, those fake tech support scams. They encourage you to click on a link that gives the scammer access to your computer. And once they have access to computer, then they can see those passwords.
Okay. Thanks. I don't see any other hands raised. So I'm going to go to Svetlana Kuznetova. So sorry, Svetlana, I can't pronounce your last name. I apologize. Who had quite a long question in the chat. And Andy, I don't know if you can scroll up to where her full question is. It's about issues with businesses like banks who call instead of other methods like texting or online chat messages or SMS. And I think if you look at the full question, you can answer it more specifically than that.
Can you speak to that? Because I'm not sure what the question is. The bank's calling instead of other methods. Most banks, I've never seen a financial institution that didn't offer the option of both a phone call and a text. But if you are working with a bank that only does a phone call, that could be challenging, especially for us with a hearing loss. So I would just go back to your bank and say, wait a minute, I can't hear your phone calls. Can't you give me your authenticated, your second factor via a text or some other means? That's the only thing I can think to suggest. Oh, there we go.
Yeah, it's difficult. So I see two hands raised. Dana Simon first, and then Ann Farley.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, hi. I really enjoyed your talk. Thanks so much. And I have a question. Sometimes people have computer problems. They have real computer problems on their computers. And I call tech support like Microsoft or Best Buy, and they say, okay, they're going to log into your computer and help you, and they need to see what you're doing. It could be Apple or it could be now, is there a possibility that you can get your data stolen or scanned if you do something like that?
You just need to be very careful. First off, you need to initiate the call. It's not like a pop-up screen on your computer that you respond to. You realize, hey, there's something funny about my Mac. I better call Apple. So you initiate the call.
Right.
Let's say you don't know the phone number for Apple. So you go to Google and search. I'm sure you've seen in Google sponsored links, right? Those sponsored links could lead to a scammer. It's absolutely critical to pass by all those sponsored links until you see the non-sponsored links, I guess I would say, and you look for the one that's actually from Apple. So if you're searching online for a tech support number, just be very careful you're getting it from the correct source.
Right, but they hire people all over the world from online. They work for a big company, so you have to assume that they're going to be reputable, right?
You're right, and that's the risk you take. What I would do is shut down all my apps
Right,
and I would stay on my computer and watch what they're doing.
right. I have a vision impairment, so I can't always do that. That's why I get the help.
Oh,
But I shouldn't have my all my passwords up, for example. I should make sure that secret file is closed.
right. Yeah. And make sure they're only getting into what they need to get into.
Right.
Can I just ask a quick question? Sponsored links often appear when you're doing an internet search. Is it also dangerous to sign on them there?
You just need to be careful because sponsored links are paid links. And scammers will pay for a link to go to but once you get past those, you should be fine. I mean, most sponsored links are going to be fine. It's just that particularly anything that relates to tech support or anything that could be a scam-like event, just be very, very careful.
Yeah, move on. Ann Farley, and you're muted.
Thank you. I really enjoyed and appreciated that presentation. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. I think you sort of addressed this, but I wanted to ask. I think it's Chrome probably as my browser. And when I have to set up a new password, something offers to set up a strong password. I think it's in Chrome. And I click on yes, and then it offers to remember it on my computer. And I do this all the time. Is this an unsafe practice?
No, I don't believe so. You're using the Chrome browser to store your passwords, which I referred to earlier, if the captions were working. And that's perfectly fine. They suggest strong passwords. They store them for you. In order to see those passwords, they have to be logged in as you with your Google password. Now, some computer experts, some cyber experts would say there's some risk to that. And there is, but we have to be practical about our security practices, right? We can't all be super cyber cops. And using your browser feature to store your passwords is much safer than using the same simple password across multiple sites. It's always
Okay.
You have to weigh the risks. And I think for most people, as long as you keep your system up to date with security patches, you're fine with storing your passwords in your browsers.
Thank you.
Al, did you have another question?
Yes, if it's okay, I have just two more questions to follow up from earlier. Um, the first is, Andy, you had mentioned that you store your doctor's phone number on your contact app, so when you get a text, it'll show up identifying from your doctor's office. So my follow-up question with respect to that is that at least when I get the text, it comes with that 5 or 6 digit identifier instead of the phone number. So the first question is whether or not the 5 or 6 digit can be stored somewhere on the contact app in lieu of the phone number so that I'll know it's legit. So that's my first question. And the second question was, you had said that you felt comfortable replying stop in order to opt out of the request for donations from that, I think, I forgot, from the Democratic Party or something like that. My follow-up question is, without knowing whether or not that number is legit or not, when you reply stop, what's the danger of doing that? Is that as dangerous as clicking a link, or there's nothing they can do other than they know, oh, your phone number is a legit phone number, and that's it, kind of thing. Sorry, I was long-winded, I know. I wanted to be clear about it.
No, those are great questions, and I don't have the answer to your first one about storing that 6-digit code in your contacts app. That's something I would go to Google and search to see if that can be done, and I would try it on my own, and I'm going to do that this week. Thank you for that great suggestion. But usually when you get a text from your doctor's office, it'll identify the office. Andy, you have an appointment this Friday at 2:30 p.m. And so that's it. And I know I have an appointment. So that text doesn't surprise me, and I'm okay with it. To your second question about stop, again, I'm thinking of the Democratic Act Blue. I'm sure many of you are familiar with that. I get texts from them all the time. So I feel comfortable in saying stop. Doesn't seem to do any good, but I go ahead and do it. But if you have any concern or any question or just a little bit of fear, it's perfectly okay to say delete, report junk. If you feel more comfortable doing that, by all means, do it that way.
Thank you.
To give people time to think of their other questions, I have another one. So if you use kind of a foundation for your passwords that you then repeat with variations, and of course you have to write them down because you don't really know what they are, does that make it easier to get into your devices? Am I clear? If you have a password that's like your address plus your last name, that you then add exclamation points or, the New Yorker or something like that. Is that secure or is that as insecure as it sounds?
Well, think about the website you're accessing. I mean, let's say your New York Times subscription. Do I need a strong password on that as I do on my bank account? Probably not. If someone hacks into my New York Times, they read the articles, what else can they do? Although they can buy things from the New York Times, I suppose. But anyway, the thing is, when you use a password manager or the browser feature, the password store feature on your browser, when you log into the next site next time, they will fill that information in for you, so you don't have to type it in. That's the cool thing about these features. But I would not use your information pertaining to you. Let me back up. When you create a password, don't use any information pertaining to you that people can look up, such as your street address, such as your employer. Because what happens is the scammers will create dictionaries, password dictionaries. And so they will try every combination of information they might have about you. Now, hopefully over time, before they get to the 50th guess, for example, your website will lock that account out and they can't try anymore. But it's safer to not use any information pertaining to you personally in your passwords. I hope that makes sense. I kind of went off on a tangent.
Yes, it does. Lauren Roche has her hand up. Lauren, you're muted and also we can't see you. Do you have a question?
Okay. Yes, can you hear me? Okay. One thing that I did not see or hear mentioned is that a key piece for security is to make sure that your mobile device is up to date on the operating system, like an iOS or Android or whatever. Make sure you have the latest and greatest. Second, on the PC, the same thing. Make sure your operating system has been updated and patched, and that your antivirus is also up to date. Because a lot of that goes a long way at the first line of defense. And then the other piece is things that you can control yourself, the sharing or not sharing information, all of that stuff, which was covered in the presentation. So I'm just reminding everyone because I didn't hear that part. Okay.
Fantastic. Thank you, Lauren. And those are great points. Sometimes I talk about system updates, but it confuses people because, well, you get this pop-up window. How do I know it's legitimate or not? And, you know, Apple or Mac or Windows will say it's time for a Windows update or an iPhone update. So I've never really figured out a good way to explain to people what's legitimate and what's not. But Lauren, you're absolutely correct. It's critical to keep all your devices up to date with security patches. And if you use an antivirus tool separate from your operating system, then yes, absolutely keep that up to date. Great advice. And there's an example where you don't need to come to me for all your advice. We all support each other. And that's how we defeat these criminals.
Thank you for that question. Diana Rolls.
Hi, Andy. The example you gave about Microsoft putting an alert on your computer. I've had that happen to me twice, but I could never get past the alert popping up on my screen with the screaming lights and sounds, and it just it locked my computer. It didn't provide something for me to link on it to to call and get caught in a scam, but it locked my computer. So I had to go across the street and see the computer guys, and for a couple $100 they removed it from my my computer. But could you say a little bit more about what's going on when that happens? Oh, I know, it's a phone number they give you to call, and then they do the thing. Yeah.
Yeah. How it typically happens is somehow you stumble on a website that's been compromised by the criminals, and then they pop up that window. It does not necessarily mean your computer has a virus, but they certainly make it very annoying, don't they? Big flashing screen, sirens, so forth and so on, and every time you close it, another one pops up. The best thing to do in that case is restart your computer if you can. If you can get to the restart button, click restart, and that should make it go away. And you typically don't have a virus on your computer, especially if you keep your system up to date with all the security patches as well as your antivirus, as Lauren, I think it was, that recommended.
Yeah, I couldn't get to anything to fix it myself. But you're making me think of something, which is, could I just turn it off on the side, just like turn the off button? Would that help?
Absolutely. And the thing is, some computers, you push the off button, it doesn't go off. You have to hold it down for 5 seconds or something. So, and that happened to me. I was trying to shut down my iPad. It got stuck in something, and I could not figure out how to make it shut down. So I had to go to my computer, look up how to shut down the stuck iPad. And it was some confusing way to doing it, but there was a way to do it. So yeah, you think it would be easy, but it's not.
You know, just for the heck of it, the way I got that situation the first time on my laptop was I had to call Amazon Kindle support. And right after I made that phone call and got tech support, I got sent an email with like a summary of what I discussed or something. And I don't recall clicking on something, but I did open it up and read it. And then my computer shut down with the sirens. And
Interesting. Okay. Thank you for sharing that.
thank you, Andy.
Beth Alberti.
Hi, Andy. Thank you for this great presentation. Really, really helpful. When you try to update your system, fortunately, I have a relatively new Mac, but I had one earlier that was like 7 or 8 years old, and you couldn't update it anymore. You know, every time they update the iOS, there's just so you know that means you have to buy a new device.
Yes.
Okay, so after that point, you don't really have the protection of the updated
Yeah.
software.
Absolutely. Yes. All computers, all devices, all operating systems have a lifespan. And at some point, the manufacturer is no longer going to support that device. And at that point, it's time to get out the checkbook and buy a new computer or a phone or a tablet or what have you. It's just the nature of technology.
Okay, and then Lauren mentioned antivirus, and I don't believe you spoke about that as an additional protection. Do you have thoughts about how necessary that is? And
You talk to 10 cybersecurity experts and you get 10 different answers. It's my opinion that if you're using the latest Mac OS or Windows operating system, they come with its own antivirus protection. Windows, it's Defender. On the Mac, what it's called. But it used to be in the old days, you had to buy AV because the operating system did not come with that protection. Nowadays, I think for most people, the built-in systems in your operating system, as long as you're using the latest and greatest, is probably sufficient. But if you feel more comfortable by installing the McAfee or some other antivirus, by all means, please do so. And if you're going to go surfing in the dark web for bad stuff, yes, you need all the antivirus tools that are going to protect you there anyway.
not planning on that. Okay, thank you.
I have a question for you, Andy. I very frequently am getting emails from Norton antivirus or whatever they are saying I need to upgrade. And I have never had Norton antivirus on my computer. I have a Mac. And so have they, I mean, they're supposed to be protecting us, right? Is this a scam you know about?
How are you getting these messages? Via email or pop-up window or what?
I forget how they're coming. Maybe in my email, text. I don't know. There's just so much input. I'm not sure where, but it's repeated. I mean, it's happened a number of times. And it just seems particularly egregious since they're the people who are supposed to be keeping your viruses out. And I never have had it, so it's easy for me to say no. Are there any other questions that people have? I think this is going to be a very good one to watch the video of later on, because there's so much information here, and I know I missed some of it. Just before you leave, you mentioned, and I think you showed it on the screen, the first forward slash. Could you repeat that? Because that seems important.
Yes, and you know what? One of my handouts I sent did not have that information in it, I don't think. So I'm going to send David another handout that explains that rule in detail. Would you like for me to bring up that slide again? Okay, hold on here. Let's see. Okay. I think you see that my chase window now, don't you? Okay. Here it is again. And as I said, I'll send in another handout because I think once you see it on paper, it makes more sense. This is the email that I received from Chase. And in that email, I could hover over, this is the link they want me to click, obviously, get the details. So I put my mouse cursor over the link, but I don't click. And somewhere in my email, it's going to show me the link. Kind of have to look for it, but it's going to be in there somewhere.
Andy, sorry to interrupt.
Sure.
Do you have two screens? 'Cause I'm seeing your screen, but not what you're describing. I see a Finder window with two handouts and nothing else.
Do you see this Chase screen, David?
No.
No?
The desktop, I see the Mac desktop background,
Oh, okay.
a Finder window that had the two handouts in it and nothing else.
I must have clicked the wrong thing then. Yep. Okay. I tell you what, Zoom is wonderful because we can be anywhere, but it has its challenges too, does it not?
100% agreed.
Okay. Okay,
There
do you
we
see
go.
it now? Okay, good. And David, thank you for calling that out. Okay, it's called the first / 2 periods back rule. Let's look at this link. After the HTTPS stuff, you are looking for the very first /. So I keep going, wait. Ah, there it is. And then I go back 2 periods. And I got it in bold so it's easy to see. This is the site I'm going to, chase.com/. That's the actual website I'm going to. Okay, the rest of the stuff is a subpage within the website, but it has to start at the top domain, which in this case is chase.com. Okay, let's look at the next one. Okay, again, I'm looking for the very first / after the HTTPS. Keep going. Oops, hold on. Keep going. Oh, there it is, my very first /. Now I'll go back 2 periods. Boom, boom. This is the website it's actually going to. The stuff that's in front of it is just filler stuff. Don't worry about it. This is the site it's going to, xry.ru, which is a Russia site. Again, let's do this one. Here we go. Even though it has chase.com in here somewhere, I'm going to keep going till I get to that first /. And then backspace 2 periods. And again, oh, it's got the word chase in it, but it doesn't end with .com. So I know that's not the legitimate Chase site. Now, having said all that, if you don't want to mess with links or clicking on links in your email, which you may not want to anyway, the best thing to do is go to your search engine and ask a search engine to take you to your bank site, your credit card site, and that sort of thing. You can always go that way. But if you're comfortable in reading the links and understand the slash rule, you can also do it that way as well. Did I answer your question, Kathleen?
Yes, thank you very much. And David, would you save the chat, which has all of the links in it for anybody who wants to see them but hasn't written them down? If you write to info@hearinglossnyc.com, it comes to me and I can send you that copy of the chat. So Andy, I don't know whether I'm more alarmed or reassured by this. I have myself been scammed, and I feel like I've since then the experience I've averted many others. But this is a treacherous area we're living in right now. So thank you so much for all of your help. And I, for one, look forward to watching the video. Our next meeting is April 15th, and it is on cochlear implants. And we have Dr. George Alexiadis, who is a cochlear implant surgeon now located at NYU Langone on Long Island. And he will be joined by a speech language pathologist, Dr. Paul Lavra, and who will talk about oral rehabilitation for implant candidates. And they will helpfully also discuss insurance coverage. So I want to thank everybody for being here for those really excellent questions. I'm sorry my internet interrupted this meeting. And I look forward to seeing everybody in April. And thank you so much, Andy Chandler, for a really very thought-provoking presentation. So, okay.
Thank you all
Bye,
for
everybody.
Thank
See
you
ya.
all for having me, and I hope to see you in Indy in June. All righty, bye-bye.
Yeah. Oh, are you going to be there? Okay.
Yep.
Good. All right. Okay.
Good.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Goodbye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.